Long, long time ago, in a small village nestled by a winding river, there lived a kind and respected man named Obinna. The village was a beautiful place, with lush green fields, tall trees that seemed to touch the sky, and a sparkling river that flowed gently through the land. The people in the village were friendly and always looked out for one another. Obinna was known as one of the kindest and most generous people in the village. He helped everyone he could and was loved by all. His heart belonged to a woman named Amara, who was not only beautiful but also kind-hearted and caring. Amara had a warm smile that could brighten anyone's day. When Obinna and Amara got married, the entire village celebrated. It was a grand party with music, dancing and lots of yummy food. Everyone was happy for them and wished them well. Obinna and Amara wanted to start a family, but as the years went by, they faced a big problem. Amara had trouble having a baby. Even when she did get pregnant, she would lose the baby before it was born. This made people in the village talk. Some began to suggest that Obinna should marry another woman who could give him children. Some people in Obinna's family were very mean to Amara. They said hurtful things and made her feel very sad. But Obinna always stood by Amara's side. He would hold her hand and tell her that everything would be okay, that he loved her no matter what. But the pressure from his family and the villagers became too much. They told Obinna he had to choose between Amara and them. Feeling stuck and not knowing what to do, Obinna gave in to the pressure and married another woman named Chioma. The very same month Obinna married Chioma, Amara found out she was pregnant. It was a big surprise and a twist of fate. Obinna felt very guilty for marrying another woman, but he couldn't change what had happened. Amara was happy about the baby, but she was also very sad. She felt lonely and hurt, but she was determined to stay strong for her baby. Amara was a very strong woman. Even though she was sad and lonely, she did her best to take care of herself and the baby growing inside her. She would talk to her unborn child, telling stories and singing lullabies. She believed that the baby could hear her and that it would help the baby grow strong and healthy. As Amara's belly grew bigger, the people in the village started to notice. Some of them were happy for her, but others whispered behind her back. Chioma, Obinna's second wife, was not happy at all. She was jealous and didn't want Amara to have a baby. Chioma would say mean things to Amara and try to make her feel bad. One day, Chioma said to Amara, "You think you're so special because you're having a baby, but remember, Obinna married me too. This baby won't change anything." Amara didn't respond to Chioma's mean words. Instead, she focused on staying calm and healthy for her baby. Obinna felt very guilty for marrying Chioma. He loved Amara very much, but he couldn't undo what had already been done. He tried his best to take care of both Amara and Chioma, but it was not easy. The house was filled with tension, and Obinna felt torn between his love for Amara and his duty to his new wife. Despite the challenges, Amara remained strong. She would often go to the river to pray and find peace. The river was a special place for her. She would sit by the water, close her eyes, and talk to the river spirit. She asked the spirit to protect her and her baby. Amara believed that the river spirit was listening and that everything would be okay. The day Amara's baby was born was a beautiful day in the village. The sun was shining and the birds were singing. Amara went into labor and the women in the village came to help her. They brought warm water, clean clothes, and comforting words. Amara was strong and brave, and after many hours of hard work, her baby was born. The women in the village were amazed by how beautiful the baby was. They said she was as pretty as a water spirit. Her skin was smooth, her eyes were bright, and she had a full head of curly hair. Amara held her baby in her arms and smiled. She was so happy to finally have her child. She named the baby Adana, which means father's first daughter in their language. Obinna was overjoyed when he saw Adana. He held her in his arms and promised to always love and protect her. Despite the tension in the house, Obinna and Amara were both very happy to have Adana. She was a symbol of their love and hope. A few months after Adana was born, Chioma gave birth to a baby girl named Chiamaka. Chiamaka was also very pretty, and as she grew, she loved her older sister Adana. Even though they had different mothers, Adana and Chioma grew up together and loved each other very much. They played together, laughed together, and shared many happy moments. However, Chioma was not happy about the bond between Chioma and Adana. She always warned Chioma not to play with Adana. Chioma was very cruel to Adana and tried to make her life miserable. She would say mean things to Adana and make her do all the hard chores around the house. But despite Chioma's cruelty, Adana remained kind and gentle. Growing up, Amara always told Adana not to go swimming with the other kids. She never agreed to it, and though it was difficult for Adana, she never wanted to go against her mother's wishes. Adana would watch the other kids play in the river, splashing and laughing, but she never joined them. Amara would always remind her, "Adana, stay away from the river, it's not safe for you." Years passed, and Adana grew into a beautiful young woman. She was known throughout the village for her kindness and her lovely singing voice. People said her voice was as sweet as the sound of the river itself. One day, when Adana was fetching water from the river, she heard a soft, melodious voice calling her name. She looked around but couldn't see anyone. The voice seemed to be coming from the water itself. Curious, Adana leaned closer to the river's edge. Suddenly, the water began to swirl, and a beautiful woman emerged. She had long, flowing hair that shimmered like the surface of the river, and her skin glowed with an otherworldly light. Adana gasped, realizing she was face to face with the river spirit her mother had often spoken about. The river spirit smiled kindly at Adana. "Do not be afraid, child," she said, her voice as gentle as a summer breeze. "I have watched over you since before you were born. Your mother's prayers did not go unheard." Adana listened in awe as the river spirit told her the truth about her birth. "Your mother came to me many years ago, desperate for a child," the spirit explained. "I granted her wish, but with a condition. You must never enter the river, or you would become one with the water." The river spirit's eyes softened as she continued. "But now, Adana, you are grown, and it is time for you to learn about your true nature. You are both of the land and of the water. You have the power to bridge these two worlds." Adana was amazed and a little scared. "But how can I do that?" she asked. The river spirit reached out and touched Adana's forehead gently. "When you enter the water, you will transform. Your legs will become a beautiful tail, and you will be able to breathe underwater. But be careful, for this gift comes with great responsibility." With those words, the river spirit disappeared back into the water, leaving Adana with her head spinning from this new knowledge. For days, Adana kept the secret to herself, unsure of what to do. She was curious about her newfound abilities, but also scared of what might happen if she used them. She remembered her mother's warnings and didn't want to disappoint her. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing in the village. A drought had begun, and the crops were failing. The river, once full and rushing, had shrunk to a trickle. The villagers were worried and scared, not knowing how they would survive if the drought continued. Adana knew she had to do something. One night, when everyone was asleep, she snuck out of her house and went to the river. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the water. As soon as her feet touched the river, she felt a tingling sensation throughout her body. In a matter of seconds, her legs transformed into a beautiful, shimmering tail. Adana gasped in surprise and delight. She could breathe underwater. Swimming deeper into the river, Adana discovered a whole new world. She saw colorful fish she had never seen before, and plants that glowed in the dark water. As she explored, she began to understand the river and its needs. Adana realized that the drought was caused by a large boulder that had fallen and blocked the river's source further upstream. With her new ability to swim powerfully with her tail, she was able to reach the boulder and, using all her strength, push it out of the way. As soon as the boulder was moved, water began to rush down the river again. Adana swam back to her village, her heart full of joy. When she emerged from the water, her tail transformed back into legs. The next morning, the villagers woke up to the sound of a full, rushing river. They couldn't believe their eyes. The drought was over, and their crops would be saved. But how had it happened? Adana knew she had to tell the truth. She gathered the villagers and, with her parents by her side, explained everything. Her gift from the river spirit, her transformation, and how she had saved the river. At first, the villagers were shocked and a little afraid. But as Adana continued to use her gift to help the village, predicting floods, finding the best fishing spots, and keeping the river clean, they began to see her as a blessing. Obinna and Amara were proud of their daughter. They realized that the river spirit's gift was not a curse, but a beautiful ability that allowed Adana to help others. Even Chioma, who had been so cruel to Adana, began to change her ways, seeing how Adana used her powers for good. As the years passed, Adana became known as the guardian of the river. She taught the villagers to respect the water and live in harmony with nature. She would often swim in the river, her beautiful tail glittering in the sunlight, and the children of the village would gather to hear her stories of the underwater world. Adana's story became a legend in the village, passed down from generation to generation. It was a tale of love, acceptance, and the magic that can happen when we embrace our true selves. And so, the village by the river thrived, protected by their very own water spirit. Adana, the girl who belonged to both land and water, who brought peace and prosperity to her people. As Adana grew older, her wisdom and kindness spread beyond her village. People from neighboring communities would travel long distances to seek her advice and help. She became known as the River Maiden throughout the region. One day, a young man named Chidi arrived in the village. He was a traveler from a far-off land, curious about the stories he had heard of the River Maiden. Chidi was handsome and kind, with bright eyes that sparkled with intelligence. When Chidi first saw Adana, he was struck by her beauty and grace. He watched in awe as she sang to the river, her voice blending perfectly with the sound of the flowing water. Adana noticed Chidi too, and she felt a flutter in her heart that she had never experienced before. Over the next few weeks, Chidi and Adana spent more and more time together. They would walk along the riverbank, talking for hours about their lives and dreams. Chidi told Adana about his travels and the wonders he had seen in distant lands. Adana shared stories of the underwater world and the secrets of the river. As they grew closer, Adana began to worry. She knew that her life was tied to the river, and she feared that Chidi would not accept her true nature. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset over the water, Adana decided to reveal her secret. "Chidi," she said softly, "there's something I need to show you." With that, she stood up and walked into the river. Chidi watched in amazement as Adana's legs transformed into a beautiful, shimmering tail. For a moment, Chidi was speechless. Then, to Adana's surprise and joy, a huge smile spread across his face. "Adana," he said, "you are even more amazing than I could have imagined. Your gift is beautiful, just like you." Chidi's acceptance filled Adana's heart with happiness. She knew then that she had found someone who truly understood and loved her for who she was. However, their happiness was soon to be tested. A group of greedy merchants heard about Adana's ability to find the best fishing spots and predict the weather. They came to the village with a plan to capture Adana and force her to use her powers for their benefit. One night, while Adana was sleeping, the merchants snuck into her home and tried to kidnap her. Chidi, who had been staying nearby, heard the commotion and rushed to help. He fought bravely against the merchants, giving Adana time to escape to the river. As soon as Adana entered the water, she transformed and swam deep into the river. The merchants, seeing her tail, were shocked and frightened. They had not believed the stories about her being part fish and quickly fled the village. The villagers, awakened by the noise, gathered at the riverbank. They were angry that someone had tried to harm their beloved River Maiden. Obinna, now an old man but still respected in the village, called for calm. "We must protect Adana," he said, "but we must also ensure that others do not try to misuse her gifts." The village elders met and decided to keep Adana's abilities a secret from outsiders. They would tell travelers that the village was blessed by the river, but they would not mention Adana's transformation. Chidi, proving his love and loyalty, decided to stay in the village to help protect Adana. The villagers welcomed him, seeing how much he cared for Adana and how brave he had been in defending her. As the years passed, Adana and Chidi's love grew stronger. They were married in a beautiful ceremony by the riverbank, with both land and water witnessing their union. The river itself seemed to sing with joy on their wedding day, its waters dancing and sparkling in the sunlight. Adana and Chidi had 2 children, a boy named Nnamdi and a girl named Olanna. From a young age, the children showed a special connection to the river, just like their mother. Adana taught them about their heritage and the importance of using their gifts wisely. Nnamdi and Olanna grew up learning to balance their lives between land and water. They could transform like their mother, but they also learned the ways of the land from their father. The children became a bridge between 2 worlds, just as Adana had been. As Adana's children grew, so did her responsibilities. She began to teach other young people in the village about the river and its importance. She showed them how to fish responsibly, how to read the signs of the water to predict weather, and how to care for the plants and animals that lived in and around the river. One day, a terrible storm hit the village. The river swelled dangerously, threatening to flood the homes nearest to the bank. Adana knew she had to act quickly to save her people. Swimming against the strong current, Adana made her way upstream. She discovered that a landslide had diverted much of the river's flow towards the village. Using all her strength, she moved rocks and logs to create a new path for the excess water. For hours, Adana worked tirelessly in the raging waters. The villagers watched anxiously from the shore, unable to help but praying for her safety. Finally, as the sun began to set, the river's flow began to normalize. Adana had succeeded in saving the village from the flood. When she finally returned to shore, exhausted but triumphant, the entire village cheered. Chidi ran to embrace her, tears of relief and pride in his eyes. Nnamdi and Olanna hugged their mother tightly, amazed by her bravery and strength. This event became another chapter in the legend of Adana, the River Maiden. It showed not only her power, but also her selflessness and dedication to her people. As Adana grew older, she began to think about the future. She knew that one day she would have to pass on her responsibilities as the guardian of the river. She watched her children carefully, wondering if one of them would be chosen by the river spirit to take her place. Nnamdi had grown into a strong young man with a deep love for the land. He was a skilled farmer, able to coax abundant crops from the soil. While he loved the river and could transform like his mother, his heart belonged to the fields and forests. Olanna, on the other hand, seemed to be more at home in the water than on land. She spent hours swimming in the river, talking to the fish and water plants. She had inherited her mother's beautiful singing voice and would often sit on the riverbank, singing songs that seemed to make the very water dance. One day, as Adana was teaching Olanna about the deeper parts of the river, they encountered the river spirit. The spirit looked at Olanna with kind eyes and said, "You have your mother's heart and her gift. One day, you will take her place as the guardian of this river." Olanna was both honored and a little frightened by this prophecy. Adana hugged her daughter, assuring her that she would have many years to learn and prepare before taking on this responsibility. As the seasons changed and years passed, Adana watched her children grow into adults. Nnamdi married a girl from the village and became one of the most respected farmers in the region. His crops always seemed to grow better than anyone else's, and people said it was because he understood the perfect balance between the gifts of the river and the needs of the land. Olanna, true to the river spirit's words, grew more connected to the water with each passing year. She learned all of Adana's wisdom about the river and developed her own unique way of communicating with the water creatures. When Adana felt that the time was right, she called the villagers together. With Chidi by her side and her children standing proudly nearby, she announced that she would be passing on her role as the River Maiden to Olanna. The villagers celebrated this news with a grand festival. They knew that their beloved Adana had served them well for many years, and they were happy that her daughter would continue this important role. On the night of the full moon, Adana took Olanna to the deepest part of the river. There, in a ceremony as old as the river itself, Adana officially passed on her responsibilities to her daughter. The river glowed with an otherworldly light, acknowledging its new guardian. Though Adana was no longer the official River Maiden, she continued to be a respected elder in the village. She and Chidi enjoyed their golden years together, watching their grandchildren play by the same river that had shaped so much of their lives. Adanna's legend lived on, not just in her village, but in many villages along the river. Her story was told and retold, a tale of a woman who was both human and something more, who had the power to bridge two worlds and bring blessings to her people. And so, the river continued to flow, watched over by Olanna, who was watched over by Adana, who was watched over by the eternal river spirit. The village thrived, blessed by the river and protected by the wisdom passed down through generations of river maidens. As for Chioma, Adanna's once cruel stepmother, she had long since realized the error of her ways. In her later years, she became one of Adanna's strongest supporters, often telling the younger children about how Adanna's kindness and forgiveness had changed her heart. Her daughter, Chioma, remained close to Adanna and her family, and her children played happily with Adanna's grandchildren by the river's edge. The story of Adana, the river maiden, became more than just a tale of magic and transformation. It became a lesson about the power of kindness, the strength found in embracing one's true self, and the importance of living in harmony with nature. People would come from far and wide to hear the story, sitting by the river as the village storytellers recounted Adanna's adventures. They would leave with hearts full of wonder and a new appreciation for the world around them. And on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the river was calm, some said they could still hear Adanna's voice, singing softly with the sound of the flowing water, a lullaby for the river and all those who lived beside it.